Oh, Kirk, that was a 7. So if that makes you feel better. So Robert and I, we were going to call her a day, but then we just started chatting again. And I was like, no, we have to record this topic. So
we're both so full of hot air. You know?
Yeah, something, that's for sure. And it was kind of talking about the world. I mean, hot button in the industry right now, biologicals.
Absolutely.
Gosh, I mean,
talk about farming.
Yeah. I mean, and we talk about, there's three parts, or the 3 circle model per se. You got the chemical, the biological, you got the physical, and there's so much focus on each one. And it seems like right now in the industry, I would say we're really focused on that biological. And maybe it's because that's the only podcast I listen to. And that could be on me. That could be 100% truth of the reason why I think we're so focused in on it, because that's all I listen to. So there's a chance that's true.
Absolutely. And it's new. It's new. And there is a ton of venture capital money being dumped into that market.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's something that doesn't need to happen. Yes. It's just, when does it fit? And if there's ways to adjust, or I should say, does it need to be this grown in a lab, or can I go to my most productive soil and create my own inoculum?
Oh, we got to bring Zach here for this.
Yeah, I know. We need to have Zach on this as well. But
a good friend of mine runs a lab, Living Soil Compost Labs, out of South Dakota, Canton, South Dakota, and I was 100% chemical company trained agronomist out of major universities. Valent paid for my master's degree. Syngenta paid for my PhD. Monsanto used to drop off Suburbans at the farm, at our research farm, and they'd come with like 2 of them, and then our advisor would leave in 1. I mean, it happened. And I met Zach one day. We do what we call the Ag Associates, and once a year we get together and we brainstorm. And we talk about just crazy ideas. Your first time's free. You can come, you don't have to talk. But the second time, you have to present something to us that you think is crazy and fun. And we all discuss it, and it's fun. It gets heated. But I don't even know where Zach... I know where Zach came. Another story. But so me and Zach finally met up at this Ag Associates, and he's a soil microbiologist, Zach Wright. And he brought his microscope. It was nuts. We moved these around the country so that we can go to a farm, and we were visiting CNN Farms, Chuck O'Byrne out in Florida that year, and so we went there and we started looking at the biology in his soil, and it was nuts how I didn't realize what was growing in the soil. This was about 5 years ago. I fell in love. It opened up a rat hole. And Zach and I rode together probably for another 3 years in the field. From then we started to screen different ag inputs and their health on soil biology and soil.
Okay.
This soil health. I shouldn't be cursing. I don't know where these things are going, but like the soil health fiasco that I'm seeing in marketing today. And just looking at the different things, and we screened a lot of different fertilizers. We screened water. We screened herbicides. We just did a nice study in Nebraska on different herbicide effects on soil health, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, but where was I even going with this? But
I think the biggest thing is...
biology is cool.
Yeah, but biology is cool, and where should we make that fix? So I made the comment, is it in this jug? That's going to be the most successful pathway, or can you get your own inoculum? I get both perspectives. There's some people that says have 3 or 4 strains. Okay, get those numbers up, shoot it out there. There's other people have a shotgun approach. Then you have the other saying you can do that with your own soil with like a Johnson Sioux compost. Okay,
I love Johnson Sioux compost.
There's a lot of potential answers. I think also it comes down to is how much effort do you want to put into it?
Okay, exactly. And it's easy for me. I'm a traveling agronomist. My bad day is I have a flight delay or something, right?
Yep.
But yeah, farming's kind of nuts. And in the U.S., it's very few people farming very big acres. And I know, planting or harvest. It's not like, okay, we'll just take our time. We have 4 months to do this. You have to plant 5,000 acres, in the better part of a week. And
Yeah.
so I can't just ask the farmer to take on a completely new project that's going to take time. Sometimes they don't have kids on the farm, or their kids don't want anything to do with dirt.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like, I don't think so. And I mean, so I don't know. You're right. I can't. So if you wanted to make your own, you could make biology better than anything you could buy in any jug whatsoever. You could do it with very little money.
Yes.
The best ones are really free, and it just takes time.
Yes.
The application, another thing I learned, I was immediately, and that's why I think I'm going to be so good at this new soil health thing, because I was against it. So I came at it to disprove everything. Like, it was true scientific method that this is wrong until it's proven otherwise.
Yep.
But the best, the thing, I always thought it was, I needed 1,000 pounds of compost per acre. And yeah, sure, if you're going to use some mediocre stuff, you do need 1,000 pounds per acre.
Yep.
But one of those things that Zach did teach me, you're extracting the biology out of this compost, and an extraction isn't some fancy machine or hexane screw or whatever these guys are using today. They're literally soaking it's like a big tea bag.
Yeah, that's I said. You're making tea. Is what you're doing.
And then they're applying this liquid. You're talking an equivalent of 1 pound to the acre.
Yep.
And they are applying better biology than anything we can find commercially made anywhere. It's like, where are you going to get tastier vegetables? The farmer's market or our favorite store that starts with a W? It's like, it's really easy.
Yeah.
And it does save money, and it increases your return on investment. But there's time, man. There's time. And we don't have time anymore.
Okay, guys, real quick, we've got a blog and a newsletter. A lot of people don't know that.
Yes, and a bunch of great information, trying to be timely, how that fits throughout that year of agriculture, that we know there's different thoughts going through our heads during different seasons.
We have different people write it. We've got people from all over the United States, different walks of life that have really cool perspectives that brings so much value as a whole. And you guys can find these. It's at singularagronomics.com under, I believe it's the media portion or blogs. There's a whole blog. There's a blogs link.
Yes.
There's a blogs link. Check out the link in the description. I'm serious. I enjoy reading those so much just because you hear from so many cool people that are we have someone new write it every month.
Well, yeah, and it's a quick read.
It is.
It's a quick read. Head to the website.
Yeah, check it out.
Well, and it's just there's only so much time in the day, and just choosing where your battles are.
True. Yeah. What's your von Liebig, so to speak? What's your minimum that you have to bring up to bring the rest of the farm up?
Yeah.
And maybe it's one thing at a time or one generation at a time. Another thing that's really cool, I find, it depends on where I go. When I'm in Iowa, Illinois, in the I states, those guys are more like me. They're plant people. They grow corn, soybean. They're plant 100%. But when I get into the fringes of society and into Nebraska, Kansas, the Dakotas, even Texas, the best biology guys, they're cattlemen. So I do find that the guys that are adopting this the quickest, they got animals.
Yep.
Maybe it's pigs or a lot of them, though, are growing cattle or, calving. They do a lot of calving. Maybe they're selling the babies.
Yep.
But I do see a strong correlation between animal husbandry and soil biology.
That's interesting. So biological side, you were talking about the connection between biology and plant hormones.
Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just jealous of the industry.
Oh, okay,
so
fair enough.
My background, even I was always a plant guy. Mom's got little pictures of me with watering cans, and my grandfather, he brought figs in from Ellis Island, from Italy. I get traces back in the family. And I would grow these figs. They're still alive today, by the way. Basil, tomato, the old Sicilians. And Anyway, and my degree is my degrees are always in manipulating plants, in plant hormones, in environmental stress management.
Okay.
So that is plant hormones. That's how plants decide where to partition carbohydrates to manage stress. So we would induce stress, and we would apply real hormones, kinetin, IAA, IBA, GA, S-abscisic acid. We would play with all of these things to try to write papers.
Gotcha.
I went on to teach, and that was the focus of my research there. I was at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and I met this genius, old man at the time, and he would come to the university and make professors look stupid, straight up. We served on the Plant Growth Regulator Society together. Jerry Stoller, so I fell in love with this guy. First, I was doing research with him, and but then, he kept making me offers. He's like, come on, son, let's get a real job. And I'm like a big professor at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, Jerry. One day I was angry with something. I don't know what it was. I said, okay. So I moved to Houston the following day, literally.
Wow.
And so I start developing international hormone markets with him. So we would call them real hormones. We were getting technical grade ingredients, formulating them into stable liquids, and then using them. We're talking 1/2 ounce to 2 ounce per acre max rates. I mean, we were really playing with plants, because the roots are the brains of the plant, right? We all have heard this.
Yep.
This traces back hundreds of years, and that's because 80% of the roots, or 80% of the hormones, come from the root tips. So auxin is your only hormone that's really getting made up top. Everything else is getting made down there and transported around.
Okay.
So it's it's just anyway. So then we had to play by certain rules. We could apply hormones in some countries, in some countries we couldn't. In the U.S., we have great rules that you're more regulated by the claims you make.
Yep.
So if we just didn't make any of the claims, we could put the hormone. We use hormones. We were okay. Then there's like the European standard or the California standard, where you have to actually declare these things. You can't just put things in products. So then the competition, because, and we invested tons of money into getting the right registrations to sell these products, legally. We weren't. Then the rest of the industry, they come to the market, and now they're using, I think the first one to play with was, the OG would have been lactobacillus, company called EM, Effective Microbials. But then everyone started using Bacillus subtilis, and that's kind of where I went sideways with the whole market.
Okay.
And Bacillus subtilis is great. It's an aggressive bacillus. It'll grow in a rain puddle. I mean, This thing is just good. You can make it in the bathtub, no problem. And you apply it to plants, and you apply it in agriculture, and for the most part, it will stay alive because it's super aggressive. Why does it work? It makes pesticides. It makes plant growth hormones.
Yep.
It makes different insecticides. It makes fungicides. It's very well documented. It's a very broad genus, species, and now we've been able to breed that bacteria, and we have some specialized in making plant growth hormones, some specialized in making these phytoalexins, some specialized in making the fungicide that kill downy mildew and powdery mildew. And so now we have this whole model based off of an aggressive bacteria. I mean, just because it's not regulated. So you have, and I'm pretty anti-large company, right? You would think I'm pretty defiant, and I'm sticking up for the large company here. So you got them fighting with Bayer and BASF. And is it because it makes a better pesticide, or is it because it's unregulated and now I can sell it? And so I don't know. I should shut up now.
Well,
it's probably been a long day.
Well, it is what it is. I just get to the plant hormone side, but even down the biology path, we talk about the genus and species that's on the label. But you even said, with that bacillus strain, how many different avenues that is documented of what it does.
Oh, yeah.
And even within the industry, they talk about, too, that maybe their strain is premier or different. And
Oh, everyone's got the best strain.
well, and
Just
you know
wait
what?
till I make a strain.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, or just go to your. I mean, what are the odds that you would just go find that in your best spot? on
Your
farm?
best spot.
Yeah.
I'll find it in your barn.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, it's a very ambiguous bacteria.
Yeah.
And it's if it's in natural populations, it's not like overproducing anything because everything's in balance. It's not in a farm. We're not talking about a sterile environment. We're talking about it's a war.
Yeah.
With like a countless number of armies that are all fighting each other. And so, like, it's all there in this equilibrium, and in a healthy or a robust, or back into the CCA world, like with certified agronomy. If you read the old agronomy books, they used to call it a suppressive soil. That just meant you had diversity.
Yep.
And you had all of the players fighting, and this guy's tank and this guy's tank, so none would take over the
Well, it's
other.
just a checks and balance across the whole
Absolutely.
situation. Just checks and balance.
But yeah, it's already in your field right
Yeah.
now, and we can find it. And there's a few tests. I think the first, and they really went heavy with the marketing, and they provide a service, no doubt.
Yep.
But they do the RNA analysis, and they'll tell you the number of species and the who cares, right? But they'll tell you the functionality that they find.
Got you.
So maybe
Okay.
they find pathogen suppressors, or maybe they find hormone producers, or maybe they find, whatever they find. But I find that to be a good test. And now I'm seeing different colleges are ripping off the platform, and they're kind of doing the same functional test.
So before we go any deeper with that, the RNA test.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, is that like the same thing as a soil genome? Is what I'm
yeah,
assuming.
exactly.
Okay.
It's a functional RNA analysis of the soil.
Okay.
So they're going to be very limited in identifying maybe, because there's so many unknowns, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they can't tell you. There's more unknowns than there are known.
100%. Yes.
But they know that certain, and this goes back to our genotype phenotype thing, right?
Yeah. Talk
And
about
I'm
the
glad
other
they
podcast.
stopped us, because
Yeah.
that was.
We would have went diving.
would have lost
We would have
it
went
there.
diving.
But they know certain base pairs, certain sentences in your DNA. DNA is like a bunch of letters, and the letter codes have different sequences.
Yep.
And they know that certain sequences mean certain things. So what they can do is search the soil for those sequences and give you the percentage of differences of the different categories.
Well, and I think it's something too. One thing with the soil genome side is like understanding that if it's present, like I thought I read this in a book one time, like Fusarium, under the right conditions, can have a positive benefit to the soil biology or the soil food web per se. But on the same side, if other things are expressed or if the environment changes, it becomes the Fusarium that all of us know and don't enjoy.
Yeah, it becomes aggressive in that environment.
Yeah.
It's the way those genes, they express themselves, and they express themselves based on the environment they're in.
Yes.
That's why, people want to use fungicides, or lately we've been working with some trichoderma, and they'll use that for phytop, they'll use it for pythium, rhizoc, fusarium, any of the water molds.
Okay.
But it's like you bumped your head, like why do you... The problem, if you have some of these water molds, is the growing conditions. So
Yes.
if you have waterlogged fields, we've been working in the valley, in Central Valley, Rio Grande, Texas.
Yep.
And citrus, grapefruit mainly down there, and Phytophthora all over the place, And they want to spray Ridamil. They want to spray, now they want something else. So we've been using phosphites, trichoderma, things like this, because they want to kind of break it up. But yes, here, buy pesticide all day long. Go ahead. None of my business. But why don't you just change the production? Maybe we'll grow, we do a lot of work in Southeast Asia, and they grow a lot of citrus, or durian. That's a cool fruit. It smells bad, but it makes like maybe a 10-kilo fruit this big. It'll kill you if it fell off the tree, and it's spiky. And
what was it called again?
Durian.
Okay.
Oh, and it stinks. You're not allowed to bring it into hotels because it smells so bad. There's like little signs. Here it says no smoking cannabis in your hotel room.
Uh-huh.
But in Asia, it says no durian. It's like, where am I?
That's their biggest worry right
Oh,
there.
yeah. But what we're doing is we're planting trees on mounds. We're trying to keep the conditions correct so that the roots aren't wet, doesn't have wet feet. We're managing our irrigation better. I mean, to bring this over to the U.S., there are fields that maybe you should tile. Maybe we start to work there. Let's start looking at the pH of your soil. If you're in the alkaline area, maybe we do start using sulfur. Or if you're in these super acids, maybe you do need limestone. Let's try to balance the field. We'll get productive growth. But you can't replace agronomy with pesticides or with, some Bacillus subtilis or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It's a system. So you have to change the environment to favor the correct biology in the soil.
Well, and like you said, you talked about the pesticide side, and we even talked about this at lunch today, was the idea of there's a lot of things, soil health, that's a negative. A lot of things in agriculture that you do is a negative, right?
It really is.
So really the question is, if it's a tool in the toolbox we have to pull out, what's the fastest way we can counteract that to keep the system moving forward and so it's not a longer term detriment? And I honestly, I think most soil health people would say, yeah, do we prefer to not hurt our soil? 100%. But I'm also going to say, if your soil doesn't have oxygen, a fast way to get oxygen into the system, a little tillage.
Oh man, and I know,
and it can make that plant make a switch, and you can see it within 12 to 18 hours.
Tillage is the enemy. In some depends on your mind and what your trying goals are, but you have to use all of it.
Yes.
I mean, and in the pesticide world, we'll call it integrated pest management.
Yep.
And you're trying to minimize the environment. You're trying to minimize the host. You're trying to minimize everything to control. So your farm is really like an integrated farm management, and there are times when we need to use tillage.
Yep.
And here's a good example. We were in the pivots in the Panhandle, and you probably got. I mean, pivots are amazing, right? and you got the big circle at 160, and then you got these little patches that are huge on the sides, and we were starting to run into this guy certified organic, so our hands are tied, but we started to run into thistle. And
okay.
I mean, you're not. What am I going to do with it? I can't even go out there and tell the guy to pull it. I mean, you just can't. So we had to switch into moldboard, and this field was very well documented. And we just did it in the strips where it was. We actually did this was no-till, trying for the Holy Grail, no-till organic, and what we did that year. We ended up increasing the yield where we used the moldboard, and we increased it. It was something like 25%. And it was classic, a release from von Liebig's. We cycled the nutrients. Yep. We got that air into the soil. We killed the thistle, and we got this giant release in yield. It was a night and day difference. But we're also monitoring everything else for organic, right? Yeah. So we're measuring the carbon. We're measuring the organic matter. In just one, it's not even a year, it's a season. And these wheat crops are so short anyway. We're really talking about probably 4 months.
Okay.
We lost 1% organic matter from that one pass.
Wow.
So in that case, we traded the organic matter we had built for a quick yield that year. Yep. That year yield does not carry on.
Yep.
You quickly absorb all that other stuff.
Yep.
We did control our weed problem. This story doesn't have an answer, but it shows that you have to focus,
It's give and takes.
What are we growing today? And we want it all, but some days we have to spend some organic matter to fix our problem so we can keep on going in the right direction. Maybe, and I hate, one step back to take 3 steps forward.
Yeah. Well, and being okay with that at times. And honestly, I think there's probably a silent majority in agriculture that would agree with every statements that we're making. I could be wrong too. Oh, well.
Well, you want to talk about easy things that we could do, and it has nothing to do with you having to compost anything or us having to buy bugs in a jug. Just reduce your chemical fertilizer. Well, one of the biggest correlations we found in that study that we did with the different fertilizers, we had a strong correlation in R value. It's the I don't know. It's the probability that it matches the true response.
Okay.
Really, it was really well correlated.
Yep.
Salt. So we were measuring the salt content of the different inputs, and the saltiest, the highest electrical conductivity, that gave us the biggest reduction in soil diversity, the biology of the soil. So anything we did to reduce the amount of salt we put into the field increased the health by all effective standards today, the diversity of that ecosystem. And there were ways to trick it. So, working with some of the more soil applied things,
Yep.
you're adding a lot. One, obviously, cut the rate.
Yeah.
Maybe we just do 80% instead of 100. And, we didn't suffer at a 20% reduction. But also, we were adding things like humics, different carbon sources, sugars, some amino packets. We make foliar micronutrients, and we have chelates, you
Okay.
know. So, and then the chelate, we react it with the oxide or the salt, whatever, you don't need to, anyway. But we would take what I call the naked chelate, and it's really just the chelator that we were going to mix in with the to make our fertilizer.
Yeah.
And we would add this to the fertilizers, and what a chelate does, or humic acid does, or even some of these sugars and carbons and fulvics do, is they wrap the salt, they wrap the metal, and it hides the charge, and it effectively protects the diversity. So you can trick it by adding a little bit to your tank.
Yeah, mask it a little bit to a sense.
Yeah, and just try to make it soft. Think about a baby, right? Well, what would it like? This is gentle, this is not.
So one thing, I don't know why, you started saying the word salt, and I thought to myself, not compost, but manure. Okay, we all know that there's a very common thread. If it's raw manure, that
it could be the devil depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, because of the salt load. It could be the issue. Tying that into biologicals, I also make an argument too that in my area, and you've drove through the sandhills of Nebraska,
it's amazing. Where
it's
did
beautiful.
they come from?
Well, there's probably a lot better answer than what I could save. So, but
I used to office out of Valentine.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. But I just think about cattle, ruminant manure, buffalo. That ground has got to where it is today because of manure and cycling.
Oh, yeah.
So definitely in my area, definitely lighter soils. It is something that I've seen good benefit, definitely if it's composted. And there's biologicals within that compost, but then if you're also finding your most productive area and making an inoculum of some sort and just drenching over the top, there's enough food source in that compost to keep feeding whatever you brewed.
Oh, and absolutely.
And then go.
And you don't want too much food. So if you start adding the food sources to it, these high nitrogens and things like that, sugars, molasses, I know that's the new craze right now, is molasses. It's good, don't get me wrong, but
Yep.
It changes that diversity. So think of it as a population. You have a population in this cup, and this has all the diversity in the world.
Yep.
When I add a drop of 1034O, it's not that it's bad, but it changes the diversity to favor the new environment with the 1034. If I add a pinch of manure, it changes the diversity to live with those nitrates. And you only get less organisms that can grow in that environment. So now you have less diversity. So I'd rather put out a bunch of starving microbes that are really diverse.
Yep.
They're they're resilient. It's very hard to kill them.
Yep.
Than put out less that are hungry. I don't know. And these manures that's why, a chemical fertilizer guy would tie this manure, it's garbage, It just shows you that manure really is fertilizer. So it's the high loads of the nitrates, the quote-unquote salts. That's why it works. It's really dominant in bacteria. It can overwhelm. So a lot of guys get it cheap, or they have it, and it's a waste product. They got to get rid of it. So if you can just age the manure, boy, it's a much better product.
Yeah.
And then the really the religious type organic people, they hate the manure. And they'll turn the manure into a compost before they apply it. So they'll take one further step away.
Well, and when you get to that composted stage, I don't know if I can find anything to argue about why that's not a good idea, unless your plant nutrient numbers are high enough in the soil that applying that compost is now, you're putting all this out there and you're not matching yield to your fertility. Like,
true.
But until that happens, I don't know if I've ever seen
I don't think
compost
I've
fail.
ever.
You know, like
No, and how could it?
Yeah.
Now, the problem I do have with it is we're putting it out, and some of the guys are matching nitrogen budgets. Like, they really are putting a lot of stuff out.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. But the problem the only problem I've encountered with it today has been it's just the release. The release of the nutrients is a lot longer than I would expect them to be.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's temperature. I don't know if it's soil biology.
I just think, I mean, it goes back to all those squares, or sorry, all those circles in that 3-circle model. I mean, it matters what's going with the physical, it matters what's happening with the chemical, and what's happening in your biological world, how fast that stuff's going to break down.
That makes
I mean, it's all three of the categories.
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And then also the crop. Let's not ignore her.
Exactly.
You know, if you look at corn and some of that we've been talking about this guy's paper all day, but Fred Bilo out of Illinois, if you start looking at the major uptake pattern, let's assume corn, you know, you're taking in most of your nitrogen between V4 and VT.
Yep.
You know, and not that you don't take nutrients in other times, but you're really taking it in then.
Well,
so we're just not matching the uptake of the crop. It's not that you don't have enough. So it depends. If you're certified organic, we might be supplementing with an amino acid package, typically a fish. And if you're not certified, we like AMS, we're using UAN, we're melting urea.
Yeah.
So, and we're trying to do it in low volumes so that we're not creating these environments that favor those organisms. And we're trying to maintain diversity for the most part.
Well, and I think that's so unique and maybe brought me back, it grounded me a little bit again, is thinking about those applications that we put on those soils does make a different expression of biology that's going to be there.
It changes the environment.
It does.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And that's something to keep in check too. I mean, we need Zach to come on. He could probably
bring his microscope. This guy.
Yeah, and he would just start going at it. But
we were at Commodity Classic together, and we're doing a soil health project in Jamaica.
Okay.
And so we'll be, I guess it's our second or third year, but they have a big agriculture event, and we go down there. We're in the center of their World's Ag Fair, basically.
Okay.
And the farmers will bring in their different soil, and we'll teach them about how to grow it. So, we'll have to incorporate Zach into these things one day.
Yeah.
Zach Wright.
Yeah. Well, Robert, it's been a great day.
Absolutely. And I think tomorrow we're in the field.
Yes.
So we're going to get some
more live action.
Yeah, enough of this. We're going to see what's
we need
growing.
some vitamin D here.
That's
so,
right.
But no, Singular, follow us on the podcast. YouTube, we have a series with Robert talking about different products.
Yeah.
Go on. We got merch on our website. Also, if you're interested in any of these products, please reach out. Go through the website. Email us. We'll get you satisfied. Robert, thank you again for your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you. Thanks for having me and representing Ag America. We really are, devoted to just turn in agriculture transparent again. And information should be free so we can make informed decisions.
There we go. Well, awesome.
Thanks for having me, team.
Yes, thank you.
Guys, thanks for watching the content so far. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. We've got all the full-length podcasts, other video information, tutorials on there. Also on all the major podcast platforms and social media sites, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. So if you like this, go ahead and check more out on all those platforms.